What's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. I'm excited today. We got a newer GoBundance guy, but not a guy that I'm not familiar with. I think that's the way I'm supposed to say that. I'm familiar with him even prior to GoBundance. He's got an amazing brand. His name is David Pere. Many of you may already know him. He's an investor. He's an entrepreneur. He hosts a hell of a podcast, and he's the founder of From Military. I got multifamily in my brain. From Military to Millionaire, which has a big following on Instagram. It's the title of the podcast. He's got content, service for his military brothers and sisters for days. Just an amazing dude. So first, thank you for your service, and second, welcome, brother.
Well, thank you very much. I enjoyed most of what I did while I was in, and thanks for having me on the show, man. This is fun. I forget what I messaged you about. I messaged you about something totally different, and then I was like, "Oh, but by the way, if you do need a guest,"
I was like, I always need abundance guys. I love hearing stories, and we got to know each other a little bit through the enrollment process. But give me a little bit of backstory on you. So you obviously had a military career, but what predated that, and take us all the way through now?
Oh, dude, if you want to get super, I don't know how to unpack this on a podcast, but this like gut checked me at the GoBundance event last week when they started talking about reading the book Unlovable and trauma. And I was like, I've never thought about any of this as trauma. I've always joked that I was like this homeschooled, sheltered weirdo, and I'd never like put two and two together. That's like 100% why I have imposter syndrome now. So when you ask me about my past, it's like, oh yeah, like I had a great childhood, great parents, great everything. They were religious, like marriage counselor, missionary, so very traditional. And then I was homeschooled, and so like I'm kind of a rebellious, out there, say the thing that everyone's thinking no one wants to say kind of guy. And that totally didn't blend in my upbringing. So I found myself like constantly having to like, whatever, live through this like almost act out past this like homeschooled weirdo like thing to try to fit in. So I think that's part of why I joined the Marine Corps, actually, is because like you talk to the Marines and they're like, oh, esprit de corps, camaraderie, honor, courage, commitment. Everyone gets along. Everybody loves everyone. And I didn't have money for school. I didn't want to go to school. I didn't know what I wanted to study, and I wanted to leave Arkansas. And then you couple all that with like, man, I really just want to belong to something that's bigger than myself. And off to wherever I went, off to boot camp it was. So, but yeah, before that, so I grew up in Arkansas as just a normal dude, played a little baseball, played a little rugby, and pretty straight laced kid.
Yeah. So what branch did you go into?
The Marines.
And what was that like? So did you start out with like, hey, I'm just going to do my 4 years? Did you go beyond that? What did that look like for you? What was your military career?
Yeah, I did 4 years, and as the original plan was 4 years, get out, go to school. I'll know what I want to study then. And that turned into 13 years. And then actually that ended this like 3.5 months ago in October. But I'm in the reserves technically right now, kind of. I don't really know what that is as far as, so I switched into the reserves and I've done one training, and I haven't figured out if I'm going to continue with that or not yet, because it's not as fulfilling as building companies or business or brand or anything else. And so I don't have to make that decision, I don't think, until like April or May. So we're going to see what happens. But yeah, so technically still in the military, I guess. But
what is it? So you were in 13 years. Like, I don't know much about the military or, law enforcement, but I think of military careers beyond 4 years as like having round numbers behind them. Like if you're in 4, you're in 20, because at 20 you get a pension. Like, why 13? Like, what is it about 13? What is it about that year? Or why did you get out at that point? I mean, I know you built a brand, you got military to millionaire, all that stuff, but what made you exit or at least become a reservist?
Yeah, you're right. Most people do either 4 or they get out before 10. And then if they make it to 10, they kind of gut it out all the way. And I met this guy, Doug Nordman. He runs a website called The Military Guide, wrote a book on like military finance. He's kind of like the godfather of like military financial independence through like index funds and 401ks and stuff. And I met him and we were talking. And one of the things he said to me was, he was like, man, if I'd thought about joining the reserves, I would have done it. And I was like, well, why? He's like, well, because, active duty, like you get to a point where you're just kind of like, I need to gut out the next 6 years to get my pension. But the reality is you could transfer into the reserves, and a lot of things change on how that works, but you still get the benefits, you still get the pension. And if you're at a financial spot where you can do that, like why stick it out with something you no longer enjoy? So for me, the reason I no longer enjoyed it, part of it probably has to do with me attaining financial freedom and building business and a brand and everything. But I think the main part was just, when I first joined, it was Afghanistan was kicking off. I went to in the first 4 years. I was stationed in Japan for 2 years. And then while in Japan, I spent 7 or 8 months in Afghanistan. I went to Tokyo. I went to the Philippines. I went to Thailand. I went to Korea. I went to Guam. I went to Germany. I flew into Canada, flew into Alaska, went to California 2 or 3 times. Like awesome, awesome, awesome time. Got to do all kinds of super cool training, super cool stuff, traveling the world. I mean, it was the adventure of a lifetime. And then I tried out for special forces. I blew out my knee, and the Marine Corps gave me orders to be a recruiter. And so now it's like, I'll be standing in a high school and tell kids about why they should join the military. Not as fun. And then by the time that was over, I got back to the normal Marine Corps unit. All the deployments were gone. And so there's not as much funding for training. You're not traveling as much. You're not, and then I got promoted. And then it was like the culmination of all this. I basically found myself at one point sitting in a windowless office. We call them a SCIF, special compartmentalized information facility. It's like when you watch a movie and you have to get like badged in like 10 times, you can't have your phone or your keys. And
yeah.
So I found myself sitting in this like windowless vault where I couldn't even access Gmail for like 7, 8, 9 hours a day. And I was like, this sucks. This is not fulfilling anymore. So then that happened. I had 2 years left on my current enlistment. And that was like right when things started to take off. So it was like my fulfillment in the military was kind of draining, and my finances were getting to a point where I was like, I can take this full time. Let's see what happens.
Interesting. Wow. All right. So you're a variety guy. It sounds like you're talking about like the 6 human needs. Like you need that movement, that excitement, that constant, like jumping around. Like that's what excited you about the military was variety. So what is it about business now? And we'll go back and I want to unpack like where you started, like what's the first thing that you did in business and in real estate and all that stuff. But what is it about, like you said, I've realized that building my brand and building businesses, that's more fulfilling. And when you think about the military and the service and the noble cause that it is of you being in there, like what is it about your brand and your businesses and building those that is fulfilling?
Well, I think there's a couple things. So one is, one of the books I read as I was trying to sort out what to do was Wild at Heart. And that was the first book I think that really gut checked and like made it a point to me to understand that the lack of adventure in my life was part of what was eating me alive. And so I felt just like, dead to the world. And it was like, I'm stuck in military and business and entrepreneurship and whatever. And I have no social life. I have no, like, I got to the point where at one point I had to write into my journal, like, you will go sit at the pool and read a book for an hour. You will stop working today for an hour. And, so I wasn't going on trips. The Marine Corps, at first I was traveling the world. I was deploying. I was driving over a roadside bomb, and like, it's not exactly fun, but it's exciting. And so there was like all this adventure, and then it just kind of became more of a desk job as I got promoted and ended up in different units. And so that part kind of went away, and then I'm coupled with all this other stuff. So now what it is it allowed me to go to Park City last week and go snowmobiling with a bunch of dudes, and it's allowing me. I'm going to Breckenridge in 3 weeks. I've been so I've been able to get some of that travel in. But then also, as fulfilling as the Marine Corps or the military in general is, and it's super fulfilling, super purposeful. I was very passionate about it. There's a lot of, I won't say like bureaucratic stuff, but like I wasn't the big man on the totem pole. I couldn't say, this is a great idea, let's do it. I could say, this is a really cool idea. Let me email you a full PowerPoint presentation and see if you decide that it's also a good idea. And then maybe I'll change the font 3 times before you read it, and then it'll get red penned, and then I'll send it to someone else, and then they won't like the idea, so it'll come back and I'll change it. And then, it was like, that's awesome. Okay. Whereas now it's like, well, kind of what we shared before the show. I just like, someone just sent me a video. Someone I know just sent me a video of a free personal finance PowerPoint that I built out with the intention of people being able to give it to their unit for like, hey, here's how you use your TSP. Here's what a VA loan is, like just basic, like 3, maybe 4 minutes per like slide, 12 slides, simple stuff. And someone just sent me a video of it being like shown at boot camp to like 200 people. And I had no idea. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I just directly impacted 200 kids who are sitting in a seat thinking like, man, I'm at boot camp and I hate my life right now. This guy's yelling at me all the time. Oh, hey, look, this guy is teaching me how to make money. Like, if I had known that when I joined the military, I mean, I would be so much better off than I am now. So it's just a totally different kind of fulfilling. Like being a Marine is amazing. Being able to know that maybe 10% of those guys, maybe 20 of the people in that room will pay attention. And if 20 of those people make the right allocation on their TSP, they're all going to be better off than I am. And I'm doing okay. So
I love that, man. Well, you're talking about impact, true impact. Like you were in the skiff, I think you called it. I can't remember the SCIF, right? Where you're five key cards deep and you can't even access Gmail in a white room doing nothing. Like, what's the real impact that you can make in that space? I could see how that's not fulfilling versus seeing an entire unit, 200 people in boot camp watching content that you put together for them to fuel their financial future. Like, which one feels better? Like, it's the nobility of the military and being a veteran, of course, is there, but the impact that you've had or can have outside of that is where it seems like it's most fulfilling for you, which is really, really cool, man. Wild at Heart, by the way, who wrote that? Do you know the author?
It's the son of some other famous author. Is it rude if I pull up the Google monster while we're talking? No,
we'll drop it. Nah, sorry, we'll drop it. We'll find it. We'll drop it in the show.
I'll tell you this because you're interviewing him soon. Brandon Turner's son Wilder is named after that book. So he was the one who recommended that book to me. And it's just like a super simple read about like why as men we need to have adventure in our life and like just be wild, be free. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's it. Like that's the solution. That's where I'm at right now.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. Is it any man would get benefit from it or any person, absolutely. Or is it only somebody that's like got that sort of that need to, like, I need to move every 3 years, I feel like, right? You know what I mean? Like, is it just that guy? That's such true.
Well, I think that guy would definitely benefit from it. I think anyone would benefit from it. I think anybody, I mean, it's the whole idea of, a lion in the zoo acting different than a lion on a safari. Right. And so I think fundamentally every guy could probably benefit from it, even if they would be the guy who prefers to watch, play video games all day and not leave the house.
Makes sense. All right, let's go back into like kind of where you got started as far as being a businessman, entrepreneur, all of that stuff. What was sort of step one? Where was it? When was it? Well, all of that stuff.
Probably August or September of 2015. I was a recruiter. This guy named Tyson, and I won't mention his last name, was basically trying to, I don't know if the word would be enlist or solicit. He was in Amway and he approached me about this great opportunity. And ironically, my dad had been in Amway way earlier.
Mine too.
Yeah. And my dad was like, probably not worth your time. I was like, oh, thanks. But the one thing that came out of that, right? I went to the event. I actually signed up. And then as soon as I signed up, he dropped me from like, oh, you're not important anymore. You signed up. I hope you have success, whatever. And I was like, this sucks. So then I dropped off. But he handed me Rich Dad Poor Dad and he was like, you should read this book. And I was like, I don't read so I didn't enjoy reading because in high school you read really tedious,
Mockingbird. I
don't care about burning witches. It might make a decent movie, but it's not a good book to read when you're 16 as a dude. And so I had read maybe one book since high school, Lone Survivor, a book. I read it while I was in Afghanistan about some SEALs, and good book. But, I hadn't read anything nonfiction since high school. And I was like, dude, I don't read. And he, I kid you not, pulls a CD out of his pocket and he's like, you drive a lot, put this in the car. And I was like,
ready. Yeah.
Oh, got me. Like, I can't say no. Like, you called my bluff. So I was like, fine. So like begrudgingly, I'm like, fine, I'll listen to your stupid book. By the time I finished that book, I had already downloaded Audible. I had found like half the Purple Library. So I read from that. I went to like ABCs of real estate and taxes and cash flow quadrant, went down the Purple Library. And then as I'm reading these books, I'm like stopping on the side of the road to be like, oh, what is that word? Google. And lo and behold, I find Bigger Pockets. And then I'm like, oh, the book on rental properties, the book on no and low money down, and the book on, and within, I wish that I could see the timestamp for when I finished Rich Dad Poor Dad, but obviously it was a CD, so I don't have it. Sure. But it was sometime in the fall of 2015. And I closed on my first duplex December 28th of 2015. So, I mean, it was a quick move, and it wasn't because I was that fast. It was just like circumstances kind of lined up. My lease on the apartment was coming up. My Harley, because I had made all kinds of great financial decisions beforehand. So, but my Harley got totaled and I used that as the down payment on the property. And then, cause I had no net worth, I was I mean, I had a little bit of money in my 401k, but a whole lot more debt. So I was probably 10 or 15,000 in the hole net worth wise.
Wow.
I just, I lucked into finding the decent duplex. I still own it and did the old house hack. I lived in one half, I rented the other half. 7 months later, I got stationed in Hawaii, which was awesome.
Yeah.
And then I started cash flowing on the duplex. I was like, wow, this is proof of concept. This is awesome. And it just kind of grew from there. I was fortunate enough in that first like 6 months in Hawaii that I ran into this bearded friend of ours who lives out there. And then I met a whole bunch of other people, but Brandon actually is well, since he's gonna be on the show, he is the full credit for why my brand exists. It was 100% his idea as a solution to a problem I had. And yeah, man, it's crazy how fast things go. I don't know.
Isn't that interesting? I met with him in Steamboat. I knew him, I was on the podcast like you. I was on the podcast, I don't know him like you do. I didn't live, in Hawaii, but know him well enough. Bumped into him in Steamboat like the last night. This was a summer event in 2021. As we record this, we're in 2022. And he was just for the first time he was alone, right? Because he goes to any event, even a Go Abundance event, like guys are like, "Hey, what's going on?" Yeah, he gets swarmed, right? So first time he was just standing there alone. Literally bumped into him, like I was backing up, like, "Oh, he's he's like 11'3", I'm 4'1", right?"
Yeah,
so
we bumped into his kneecaps.
His kneecaps, right? Yeah. So and we got talking. He's like, "Hey, man, I see the stuff you're putting out. Like, what are you seeing here? Like, what's going on with you meeting for me?" And I'm like, here's what I'm thinking. And he gave me such great brand advice around this whole idea of like leaving a corporate job in your 40s and all of that stuff. Like even key phrases to use, ways to market it. I mean, it's just like it just opened up for me. And it wasn't that like he gave me hacks or tricks, but he gave me like the vehicle to pursue the purpose that I have. And it sounds like he'd get the same for you. So proximity to guys like that can absolutely unlock you. So I'm curious, like, so I don't read, I read this book and then I read an entire library. How does that inform you today? Like, do you do anything differently today? Like who is the guy today that gets presented with a book or an idea or something like that versus the guy then? I mean, I'm guessing that you do more with like suggestions or whatever, but like the intentionality you have today versus where you were going then. Can you just talk about that shift?
Were you in the room the first day we were doing, or maybe it was the second day when we were doing the interviews at Go Abundance?
Yeah.
One of the guys shared that his friend wrote a book on overcoming imposter syndrome. I don't know if you caught that. So I was the guy in the back of the room who was like, "What's the name of the book?"
That was you?
Yeah. So I'm like yelling, like, "Wait, hang on now. You can't so already 3 chapters into the book." So
yeah.
I guess, I mean, at this point, I think I just looked it up. I mean, I've read hundreds of books on Audible at this point. I actually read at like 2.5 times speed because I'm ADHD and I try to get a whole bunch of stuff compressed. And then if I get something really valuable out of the book, or feel like I missed something, I'll buy the physical copy and then I'll highlight through it and then I'll read like the new Ray Dalio book. I'm like halfway through it and I've already ordered it because I'm like, yep, I'm missing stuff. This is too much.
I do the same exact thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I think now so when I first started, it was like read, consume everything. Now it's much more of a like, okay, I'm struggling with my time. So I'm going to read the book I just finished, which was awesome, was Free to Focus by Michael Hyatt, all about, time management and setting boundaries for your schedule. Like I will not do this. And that's been very helpful. Reading this book on imposter syndrome, because no matter how much I recognize that I have it, it still bites me in the butt. And so I'm trying to like intentionally read books like that, or like Traction or something where I'm going to like, it solves a problem or a need that I have. And then can take action on it right away. So
what's the name of the book first off? The name of the imposter syndrome book?
I think it's just called like Overcoming the Imposter. It's by, I want to say Chris Kelso. I'll text you the info.
No, yeah, absolutely. And we'll drop it in the show notes, but that's good. But the question I ask about, like, look, so on the surface, at least, you've got this big brand, I don't know, 40, 50,000 followers on Instagram at this point, which is a significant size brand. You've got exactly what your brand is. You went from military to millionaire. You exited at a young age early, like, most guys or gals in the military would be like, you're only 7 years away or whatever it might be. Like, how do you just leave it? Right. You've done all this incredible stuff. You go from August 2015, getting a purple book or CD, to December of that year closing. Not like you found it 6 months later. You closed 5 months later on your first duplex and you're in Hawaii and you brand. Where's the imposter syndrome? What is the imposter syndrome? Describe that for me.
The imposter syndrome's in the brand. So it's in the being of a public figure, and it's in the I would imagine the biggest way that it manifests itself is in the idea of a governor. And so this is kind of the realization. People talk about like a thermostat, for like your wealth. I would kind of view like that's part of it. And I'm working on that, but I also feel like I have like a governor. So on a car that could do 200 miles an hour,
Sure.
they may limit it to 140, so that you don't kill yourself or whatever. Or if you have a rental car, they probably limit that thing to 90, something like that. And so it comes out for me, I think, the most when it's like, I could probably lay the pedal down here. Like I could probably go all out, and I'm holding myself. Like you can just kind of, it's like when you're, I guess like a good representation would be when you're like 17 years old and you're wrestling a friend, and in your head, like I could probably snap this guy in two right now, but I'm going to hold back a little bit so that it's like, I could win this right now, but I don't want to go all the way because I don't want to hurt that person. Well, you probably wouldn't hurt him if you just let off, if you went all the way and did the thing. But like people, it seems like people hold themselves back. I am terrible about it. Like I will, prime example is that I had this great idea for a mastermind group for service members like 2.5 years ago. And for 6 months, I had the idea. And I said, who am I to start that? And I had the idea and said, I don't know how to start that. And I had the idea. And it finally started when a friend of mine came up and said, hey, I've been thinking about doing this. You want to do it? And I was like, yes, now I have permission. And so it's things like that. I've gotten a lot better. And I've gotten to the point where I can recognize it and be like, no. I'm going to hire myself out of that role so I get out of my way. But I still struggle with the idea of, like publicly saying like, look at what I've done, or publicly saying like sharing success stories or sharing, income or going all out on something that I think is going to win. Like I still find myself holding myself back on things. So,
it's interesting you bring this up, and this is so I don't know, aligned with where I am right now. You talk about Park City. I sat down, I stayed with my pod off property. You can listen to the episode I did on recap from Park City. I kind of go through how I did Park City, off property Airbnb with my pod. And one of the guys in my pod leaned over, and mind you, this is a guy that started in the low income housing development space like recently, and now has like 7 deals. And if you don't know anything about that space, nor do I really, but like the income he makes off of these because of developer fees and government, this, that, and the other contracts is like millions per. Big money, right? He's doing amazing things. We're all sitting at a table, having a drink, chit chatting, like 3-4 different conversations. There's 5 of us there. And he leans over and he goes, you're the biggest action taker in this pod. And I was like, BS, man. That was like just right behind your head there. No BS. It's like bullshit. No, that's not me. That's you, right? Like you've done this, you've done that, and we're going back and forth. And I kind of like signaled to another guy who wasn't paying attention, another guy in my pod. Hey, who's the biggest action taker in the pod? And he points at me and he goes 1, and then points at my buddy and says 2. Like me? Like not me. They're like the changes you've made in your life, all of that stuff. But still, I don't believe that version of me. Right? Talk about the imposter. I don't believe the version others see of me. I feel like at any point in time, I'm going to be found out as this massive fraud. And I'm at the space where I'm kind of like you said, like a governor, a thermostat. Like I feel like there's this ceiling and there's a hole somewhere to get out of it, but I just don't know where it is. So like you read the book on imposter syndrome. Is there anything else that you do or that you have done or that you're learning to do to unblock yourself? Because I need to know.
So real quick, it's funny you mentioned that story, because a true imposter syndrome thought is, you asked me before the call if there's anything that you shouldn't ask me. I was like, no, I'm an open book, right? And you're like, well, we're going to dig into the one sheet. I'm like, that's cool. I'm an open book. Yeah. In the back of my head, it was like, I'm like, oh man, I don't know what questions he's going to ask. What if he asks a question that I don't like? I don't want to be found out. Like, yeah. So that's totally a thing.
Always.
Dude, the best answer I can tell you is what you're already doing. It's GoBundance. And it's not, doesn't necessarily have to be GoBundance. It's people. It is surrounding yourself with people who are farther down the path than you want to go. And essentially just being like, hey, am I doing this right? Cool. Thanks. It's not even like asking. It's weird because it almost feels like asking permission sometimes, but it's not like a, hey, do you think I can do this? It's like a, hey, tell me that I'm not like losing my mind here so that I can give myself permission to go after this thing. And I mean, that happened, it happens with the right. I mean, there's a recurring theme in my life where every time I bump into Brandon Turner, something crazy seems to happen. And I don't want to put that on him. And I don't think people need to swarm him. It just, he just he just resonates right with the kind of the things I'm doing. And like 3 months ago, we're at Bigger Pockets conference and we were sitting down for coffee. I pulled him aside, like, hey, I know you want to be saved from all these people. Let's go hide somewhere. And I'd love to just talk about life. And I had a problem. I just like a thought, couldn't find the solution. Like I'm trying to think about how to partner with a mortgage company or how to start a mortgage company, how to build a mortgage company, how to do this thing. And he was like, just hire a COO and build it, or partner with one that already exists. It was like the simplest answer in the world. And it totally changed how I think about things. But it gave me permission to just reach out to several friends, be like, hey, you ever thought about partnering on this? Like here's what I could bring. And we're in negotiations with attorneys right now on a contract to draft some official stuff up. And it's like, I hadn't even thought about the idea of just going to something that was already totally in place, knowing my value in the marketplace and saying, I can help you do X. If that sounds good to you, let's go. And so it's just surrounding yourself with people who think bigger than you or have done what you already want to do, or they're further down the road, because the people farther ahead are never going to tell you you're an idiot. They're not going to tell you to slow down.
Yeah. No, I love that, because you're right. Like if I think about the time in GoBundance specifically, that's the group I chose to be in, right? I was intentional about finding my way there, as have you. It's really that's gotten me here. And then there's great concepts in a book like Gap in the Gain. I love that book. That's a Benjamin Hardy, Dan Sullivan book. If you haven't read it, I recommend it. It's a really easy read.
It's on the list.
It's on the list. Yeah. So it just talks about that principle of like, we always are looking ahead at the ideal, and we give ourselves stress and anxiety and pain and anger that we're not where we want to be. Meanwhile, where we are right now is where we wished we would be 3 years ago. Like if you told us where we are now, whoever, this isn't you, me, but anybody, where you are now, likely, if you said to 3 year ago version of you that this is going to be your life, you might be like, oh, that'd be cool. But you don't recognize it. You're focused on the gap, not the gain that you've made. You're focused on the upcoming gap, not the gain that you've made. So those are some of the principles. And then, I've gone, talk about reading, I've gone down a rabbit hole on, like, you ever hear the book Change Your Mind by Michael Pollan?
No, I have not.
Now we're getting into like ayahuasca and psychedelics and stuff like that.
I'm in the military.
My mind is just going into so many different places of what are some things that I see other people, like, the Joe Rogans and Tim Ferrisses and very successful guys in GoBundance, utilizing that therapeutically to sort of, like you said, change those patterns and change that thermostat or release that governor or whatever it might be. That's amazing, man. So what does the business look like today? What is what do you have? What's portfolio wise, or from military to millionaire brand? Like, give me an idea of what this all looks like. What are the tentacles?
Chaos.
So
thank God for people like, David Osborne, I guess, for a prime example, or Richard Branson, or Elon Musk, who don't have one really successful thing that they focused on, because otherwise people like me would just feel like I'm a mess, because I'm all over the place. So I have, we got 6 LLCs, 4 of them are real estate, just holding companies for rentals. One is an active, so off-market deals, wholesaling, flipping, buying stuff and then renovating it and putting it in the rental portfolio. And then the 6th one is the brand. And so that's, I guess, realistically, I consider like 3 businesses right now, with another 1 or 2 that I'm, you know how the game goes. I go to GoBundance and I'm like, ooh, I had a great idea. So we'll see. I got to figure out how to build that without me being involved, because otherwise it won't happen. So the 3 are the brand, the buying off market deals, and then all the rentals. And they just kind of, like, the money just kind of goes bucket to bucket down to the rentals. Right now, I think we're sitting at like 107 doors that I either own 100%, 50%, or 33% of. That's a 40 unit hotel, 3 smaller apartments, and a whole bunch of 1 to 4 units. I would have known the exact number, except we've bought and sold like 6 houses in the last couple of weeks, and I don't remember where we're at. So,
no, it makes sense.
And then I'm a small partner as a GP on a syndication, and partnering on another one right now with Matt Faircloth that should close here in about a month. So
what does that look like? What does that look like? You're a small GP. Are you just capital raising, leveraging your audience? Like, what does that look like to be a small GP? What are if you don't mind?
The roles are a little bit different in both, but it's definitely, it's raising and then like investor relations. And on the first one, I actually flew out and did the due diligence and everything. On this one, much more just the kind of investor relations and helping with the raise, which is just a whole new world for me, and really weird. And in the fact that this is a 506c and a whole lot of my audience is not accredited. And so I didn't put that together as far as being a challenge until I was like, woohoo, let's go. And then everybody was like, not accredited, not accredited, not accredited. I was like, huh. So, so done a little bit of that. So that's like the rental stuff we've done. We've got 5 or 6 wholesale / flips going on right now. I say 5 or 6 because we got a text last night from a seller that said, I don't think I want to sell anymore. We're supposed to close on Friday. And I'm like, I don't really know what we do here. You can't like, I don't know that you can like put a gun to someone's head and be like, no, you will sell me the house.
Oh,
like,
you're military. You got
it's
a
not the
background.
ethical way to do it.
Right. Well, that's true. That's true.
You know, doesn't make me feel good or sleep well. So we got all that. The brand is growing so fast. It's kind of crazy where we're at right now. So we are at like 45,000 on Instagram, almost 38,000 in the Facebook group, 50,000 on TikTok, closing in on 10,000 downloads a month with the podcast, which isn't, the podcast is probably like the smallest of the different arms, but it's just fun because you get to talk to people and hang out and learn a lot, make connections. So we've probably got about 200,000 people across all platforms now. And it's crazy because like, dude, the Facebook group grew 19% in the last 30 days. And so it's like,
why?
It's like TikTok. I think TikTok, honestly, because my TikTok went from 20,000 to 50,000 in a month. Wow. And I got like 250 emails from that happening, which is I've gotten more engagement from TikTok than I have any other platform. And I laughed about TikTok for like a year and a half. And now I'm like, oh my goodness, this is so infinitely more powerful than anything else I'm doing. So I mean, that's kind of the brand. I don't know. I feel like that's
no, that's great, man. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I love that. The TikTok thing is interesting. I've just started really diving into that with the social media team that I have. It's sort of like taking whatever I would do on Reels and putting it in TikTok. It's sort of like the same content, but I haven't seen that kind of growth yet. So I'll have to maybe figure out what you did, hack your brain and figure out what the heck you did. So, all right, let's dive into the one sheet. We're going to go through the different pillars of the one sheet. You are about 2 months in as a GoBundance member at this point?
Probably. Yeah. Not much more than that.
Just about. And you've got your first event under your belt, of course. And if we have time, we'll talk about maybe key takeaways from that above and beyond what you said. But let's start in the horizontal income pillar. So if you're comfortable sharing, what is your current horizontal income and how many lines of income is that?
Yeah. So so it's kind of complicated. I'm learning that I'm going to have to revamp a lot of this through the event, but I put 52,000 for horizontal income last year. I didn't include any of my brand. I didn't include that was just like real estate. Yeah. And that was, net, whatever. So I guess if you count each property as a line, it's like 20, 25 lines. Yeah. But now talking to people, I'm realizing I could probably count at least part of the brand because when I was gone last week, things kept happening because I have an assistant, some VAs. And so it really kind of depends on how you skin that cat. But
what does the brand look like? What do you say it ran? Like what happens in the brand? Do you have weekly calls? Like, what does that look like? If you don't mind me asking.
Yeah. So it's, so the biggest revenue driver in the brand as a revenue side is referrals. So I'm a licensed real estate agent. People are always hounding me for introductions to agents and lenders who understand the VA loan. And so I'm just like, oh yeah, I've been the last 2 years, agents have been hitting me up and I've gotten to know people enough to know like, hey, this guy actually knows what he's doing. Sure. And so I'm a connector. So I was just introducing people. And one day a mutual friend of ours, David Green, was like, if you were licensed, you could ask for like 25% of the commission for that introduction. And I was like, huh.
I should get licensed.
I'm already doing that. I should probably take advantage of this. And we average between 10 and 15,000 a month in that from like email introductions. And my assistant sends the emails. My assistant sends the referral form. My assistant updates the CRM. I'm totally hands off.
And you're not counting that as horizontal.
Yeah, so that was what I got checked on this week because I'm like, well, I'm in the brand. I'm filming videos all the time. I'm making content. It's totally active. And then like talking to people, I'm like, actually, I
Maybe
haven't
not.
personally sent one of those emails in like 3 months.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
maybe that is horizontal. I mean, I build all the relationships. So
Sure.
I'm vetting the agents, I'm vetting the lenders, I'm talking to all of everybody and finding people and whatever. I'm just not having to send all the, in the inbox, sending all the meaningless, not meaningless, but like very easy to template out of like, hey, I've CC'd so-and-so, and this is everything you need to know about that person. Now I can copy that. And anytime I send an email introduction to that person, I just copy the intro. So,
Oh, wow. Yeah. Makes sense. All systematized. All right. Let's go over to the health side. How about weight and body fat percentage?
ooh, fat. So this is the struggle, right? So, and we're not we probably don't need to get super, super into the weeds on this, but man, you want to talk, people say getting out of the military is rough. And I was like, I've got this figured out. I'm financially free. I have a purpose. I am set. And then I moved back to the Midwest and there's like no Marines around me. And I was like, I have to not swear at people and I have to like
Yeah.
behave and watch what I say. And I can't just talk about crude locker room stuff all day like we do in the Marine Corps and like just tell people like you're a jerk. Why don't you leave me alone? Like I have to
Yeah.
be nice. And um so I'm kind of going down this journey. I'm going to make content about this eventually. But there's like this whole so the military talks about PTSD from combat and they talk about like don't beat your spouse, don't get a DUI. PTSD shows up as you like not sleeping and hitting the ground when a firework goes off. I never experienced any of that. The sleeping thing, maybe, but
Sure.
the rest of it, whatever. And then I get out and I ran a half Ironman in August and I was
Wow.
210, 211 pounds. And by November, I was 30, 35 pounds heavier while
Crazy.
training for a full Ironman. And my diet hadn't really changed. And I'm like, okay, that's an insane amount of weight to gain. Like, what's going on? So I started chasing the tail. And that bull versus bear discussion really hit home because I had just started testosterone treatment because mine was in the gutter.
Mm.
Uh, and I found out through Joe Rogan podcasts and connecting and whatever, there's this whole side of PTSD and traumatic brain injury and stuff where like essentially what I'm trying to figure out, like trying to piece together is I think me driving over an IED, I'm totally fine. I've always felt totally fine, but I think that was like a traumatic brain injury, which is whatever, but nothing ever came of it. And when I got out, it was like the stress of getting out just like triggered something. And all of a sudden there's like a direct connection between like having a TBI to
Yeah.
PTSD to low testosterone to sleep apnea. And it was like all of that just hit me. And so, yeah, so health is probably the lowest pillar. I am still training for the full Ironman. I'm supposed to run in May, and the weight is finally coming back down as I'm getting all that stuff fixed. So just kind of hoping that comes back where it needs to go as fast as it needs to go. But yeah,
Wow,
I'm
man.
I'm like 35 pounds over where I want to be.
Well, that's thanks for explaining all of that. That you're so right. Like there's so much there. Like I had a discussion with my holistic. I have a holistic doctor, right? Like this doctor I go, we have quarterly visits or whatever. And she's like, yeah, you know what the best thing you did for your health was? I'm like, no, she's like, quit your job. Like, oh, really? She's like, yeah, you light up when you talk about what you do now, but before, not so much. So like, it's funny how we think about like, okay, what about carbs? What
Yeah.
about, this? What about that? Like all the stuff that's kind of on the surface, but at the base of it, to your point, is this underlying condition of PTSD that you just didn't, recognize or want
Yeah.
to recognize or whatever it might be. Insane. I appreciate you sharing that. That's
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah. Long answer short, overweight, hoping to get skinny again,
How about family? Tell me a little bit about the family. What does that look like?
Yeah, I got a wife and I got two kids. I got a 5-year-old son and a 13-year-old son, whatever. And then we've got a little corgi named
Hmm.
Winston, and we live on 10 acres in Missouri in a little house. Got a 4-wheeler and we cruise around. And I, the last year and a half I was active duty, my spouse and family had moved back to Missouri to take her old job and go back to school. For the kids go back to their normal school and everything because California was just rough as far as all of that. And
Hmm.
so we are like, well, I'm transitioning. Like I can focus on the business. I can really dig in and go all in on this. And you can get everything set up. And when I come back, it'll be great. Which was great in practice, but probably the worst decision we made relationship wise because it has been rough coming back into the picture. They've got their own habits, they've got their own routines. I haven't been around. So like while logically everything worked, I hit financial freedom. I was able to leave the military and whatever. Um, it's been a rough adjustment. So part of what I'm doing, the reason I read Free to Focus, is I'm starting to set rules like no scheduled calls after 5 p.m., no scheduled call, no nothing on Sunday. Like I'm not opposed to a call or two on a Saturday here and there, but I was so focused on growth that I wasn't enjoying life with them at all. And so, this really hit home when well, shoot. So I'm just now getting to the point where I've like cleared out my schedule from the things I did have already scheduled after 5 p.m. I showed up at the house at maybe 5:15 2 days ago, and my 5-year-old looks at me and he was like, "Oh, Dad, you're home early. What are you doing home so early?" And it was just like, well, this is what we're doing. So
funny. I'm right there with you right now. I'm trying to clear out after 5. I've done all right, but I got 1 or 2 things that are kind of lingering. And to your point, the weekends in general, I try to keep extremely clean. Sundays I like to plan my week, but but it's just time for me to get away and do something. But man, that means a lot. That makes a lot of sense. I know exactly where you are right now. Exactly where you are.
It's like we should hang out more. We've got similar problems.
We have a lot of the ADHD, the imposter syndrome, you name it, man. How about let's do this? We'll fire around the last couple of categories here. How about giving back, genuine contribution? Where do you like to? What do you like to? What's your contribution look like?
Man, I'm really trying to figure that out on the charity side. I was really heavy into a charity about a year ago, and I just kind of peeked through the 990 or whatever and realized that my funds weren't going where they should be. So I'm kind of in a weird transition where I'm trying to figure out if I'm going to start giving more locally, like to my church and just local community charities, or there's a couple of veteran charities that I am friends with people who've like there's one in Texas, I will have to revamp, but one of my buddies was like really struggling and got sent there for like a month or two, and they like turned his life around, right? He was on the brink of suicide. And so some of those charities they hit home. So I'm kind of trying to feel out like which one is, they all sound awesome, but it's like, which one are my funds actually going to go where they need to? And then as far as the like donating time, I'd like to coach my kids, t-ball or baseball team this year, because I was doing that a little bit in Hawaii, and I'd just like to find a way through my community. I do a lot of free content and free stuff through the community, but I don't do like one-on-one or group like free like mentor calls. So trying to figure out like that might be a good way for me to give back a little bit more, is just like,
I hear a future, I don't want to call it a business, but from military to millionaire charity fund. I just throwing it out there. You never know.
You never know.
Let's do a question from the card game, the GoBundance card game, to wrap it up. And here's the question. This actually speaks, I think it's funny. Like I generated this before. I didn't. Right. But as our conversation goes, this makes a lot of sense. What's something you don't give yourself enough credit for?
Oh. And the imposter syndrome,
it's bubbling up.
I don't want to answer that. I don't know how to. I don't give myself enough credit for the brand as a whole, and for what we've accomplished with that. So we were recording a podcast the other day, and it was me and my co-host for my show both being interviewed, and my co-host was like, yeah, David is he doesn't realize it yet, but he's the Brandon Turner of military real estate, or the whatever, the guy. And I've never even thought it, like that thought has never crossed my mind. And yet I realized like I am this is the single largest like military real estate entrepreneurship community, if you factor all platforms that I know of in existence by far. And yeah, I just when you hear me talk about it, I'm like, yeah, man, I don't know. Like I just kind of started blogging and documenting what I was doing, and then it exploded. And next thing I know, I'm like, oh my gosh, what do I do with this thing?
Yeah.
But I mean, the reality is like, I put out 600 YouTube videos, 150 podcast episodes. I've been making videos and content for 3 years. So I don't allow myself to, I'm like scared that if I give that to myself, that the ego will pick up and ruin it. So I hold back on it. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the governor you're talking about, right? Like truly releasing yourself. So maybe we'll go do a ayahuasca trip together. Who knows? But
Machu Picchu's on my to-do list this year.
There you go.
So,
there you go. Never know. Never know. What's the best way for folks to learn more about you, find you? Where do you want to direct people?
Yeah, if you want to just talk to me directly, Instagram at From Military to Millionaire. I respond to everybody unless you're spammy, like,
Yeah.
I
You
will
want to
send you my
expand your
picture.
Instagram? Yeah.
Send me $500 and I'll send you 5,000 next week for guarantee.
Yeah.
With your extended car warranty.
Right. Right.
That's good. Or if you want to get into the community, into the brand, or reach out, really at this point you can pretty much just Google Military Millionaire or From Military to Millionaire. It'll pop right up.
You'll have it there, man. Amazing getting to know you a little bit more, and it's been great connecting with you. We will definitely continue to talk because there's so much similarity. Like, I see what you're doing. I'm amazed by it. I can't imagine where the imposter is in that, and I know that happens. With me, it feels weird to say, like, I know I'm doing amazing things. Like you said, like, that's not what I mean. I want to keep that humility, but you get the point. We always see the other person as doing something at a level that's like beyond what we are. But man, I could tell you from afar, at least, you're doing incredible things and you're serving an amazing community. So kudos to you. And I'm so glad you came on.
I appreciate it, brother. Thanks for having me. This has been a lot of fun.